Hello, everyone. This is Tony Lawson, CEO, co-founder of SHOPPE Black. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Buwa Binite, the managing principal of Dantes Partners. How are you doing today, Buwa?
Phenomenal. Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. So you are a real estate developer out in DC area, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell us about, how you got started in the real estate development and, kind of where you are now?
Sure. I started out here. Uh, I always say I'm a product of the family business. I grew up with nothing but entrepreneurs. So deep down inside, I've always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Clearly, the family, well, not clearly, but the family has always been involved with real estate. Initially, I ran away from real estate. I moved out to the West Coast thinking I would be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Failed miserably at that, and found my love doing real estate deals, just as a pure consultant, and never looked back ever since.
So what is it about real estate that interested you or got you hooked?
For most people, it's about bricks and mortar. For me, it's about finance. I just love the way you know you can take a piece of asset. Yes, it's very tangible. For me, it's very, very tangible. You take a rundown building, you try to improve it, and you create value out of it. My father always told me that if anybody wants to be in business, you have to be in the three major um, categories that people consume.
Mm.
And food is one major category.
Yeah.
Clothing is another major category, and obviously housing is the third major category. Well, I'm not a good clothing designer, even though I like fashion. I don't know anything about processing food or owning a restaurant. So I figured the next best thing is to be in real estate.
Okay.
So everybody needs a place to live.
You're right.
So that's my story.
Okay. Hey, at least you caught one of the three.
Yes, absolutely.
So your firm specializes or focuses on affordable housing. Is that right? Can you kind of give like I guess, a definition or your definition of affordable housing and explain why you decided to focus on that area of real estate specifically?
Sure. It's not just affordable housing for us, right? We always say luxury affordable housing. So
Mhm.
for me, the reason why my company focuses on affordable housing is because, like I say, I've said, in numerous occasions, it's a very personal story to me, right? So, I've been lived in New York City, San Francisco, and DC in the earlier days. I realized very quickly, especially when I lived in New York and San Fran, that despite the fact that I made good money, I could not afford to live in the city. I had to commute, hours on end to work, and that became, very troubling for me when I graduated from college in New York City, where I had to move to Jersey City because that was the next best place for me to live.
Mm.
Decent quality place, and you know, as a young man living in New York, I felt like I had a curfew because the PAT train at the time wasn't 24 hours. So if I did not catch the last train, I would be stuck in the city, which rendered me almost homeless. So I really hated that feeling. So that feeling lived with me for a very long time. So when I finally got into real estate, I realized that there are tons of people like me when I started off in the business who were making, 60, $70,000, working in, in high growth, neighborhoods or areas,
Mm.
where, who wouldn't want to live in New York? Who wouldn't want to live in San Francisco? But as you can imagine, the supply there was so small that it became, exorbitantly expensive to live. So I basically made it a calling of mine to cater to those individuals who, are making decent salary, but also trying to look for a decent quality place
Mm.
to live in as well. So that's primarily been the focus of my firm.
That's interesting. And can you describe, I guess, the first deal that you did and one of your most recent deals?
Sure. The first deal I did is, it's a ground up. We specialize in ground up construction deals. So, I pursued. I competed for public land that the district had put out for bid, and every single developer that had pursued the site was proposing luxury condos, like 700,000 condos, 900,000 condos, and I was the only developer that proposed doing affordable housing.
Mm.
And at the time, and by the way, it's in a neighborhood where condos were going for easily 700, and I think now they're going for about 900 to maybe $1 million in this particular neighborhood. And at the time when I was bidding on the site, there was a lot of talk about the city not doing enough to create affordable housing and not using its resources to create affordable housing. And given the fact that I was the only one who bid on who had proposed affordable housing, I essentially won the deal.
Wow.
And it was my very first deal. I learned a lot from that particular transaction. I learned a lot about what it meant to not only build a site from the ground up. I also learned a lot about what it took to build a company, right? That would be self-sustaining doing real estate deals, because these deals take forever to get off the ground. And it was a great learning experience, as far as I can tell. We still own the property till today. Property is experiencing some pretty good rents, very high occupancy rates, and it's still my first love. My firstborn child.
Firstborn, your firstborn. No, that's great. So what is the most recent deal? Because I know you've been in the news, or company's been in the news for a few deals that you've done. Like, what is the most recent one, or actually the most memorable one, should you say, for you?
Well, it's interesting because, yes, we've been in the news a lot. We've been experiencing some really, really good successes over time. I think right now, the thing that I'm most proud of, it's like, look, how many times can you put up a building and get very excited about it, right? It's the same thing that I always say. Like, I love the fact that, and it's a deep honor that we can contribute to the skyline of any city that we're in. But my thing right now is, how can we really use real estate as a tool to help uplift, the community as a whole?
Yeah.
So the last deal that I did is a building in downtown DC. So number one, there aren't any buildings in downtown DC that is owned by a Black person. Right. So you think about it, everyone says all this about Chocolate City, but yet, we own very little.
Yeah.
So four brothers came together and decided to do something that had never been done before in the District of Columbia. And we did it successfully. It's a very, very beautiful building, 104 units, brand new construction. And not only do we own the building, but we also use that bully pulpit. I think it was this $50 million deal. And we said, how can we use this $50 million transaction to help grow the capacity of an architectural firm, help grow the capacity of a Black and brown, interior designer firm? What are we doing with our subcontractor community to make sure that they're all part of this, this overall ecosystem? So, so the key is it just doesn't stop with me and my partners, in terms of us making money. It's like we're using that tool to help grow the capacity of other firms, such that they can parlay that experience into doing bigger and larger deals and more deals, and grow their own companies as well.
Yeah, I love the idea of building the ecosystem and contributing and helping other Black-owned businesses, that are in the industry come up as well. One thing that you actually mentioned on one of our first calls was about government contracts and how you feel like there aren't enough, whether it's Black developers or real estate professionals, either bidding or going after those. Is that accurate, you say?
Yeah, it's very true. So if you sort of think about it, right? I think the District of Columbia is the District of Columbia, right? Which is, the mayor is fighting very hard to get us to become, a state. We've got a $9 billion budget, and when you look at our procurement dollars on an annual basis, like I don't think 1% of that is being spent in the Black community or with Black firms, right? And you and I know that there really isn't a percentage of $1 billion that doesn't make sense, right? So, so the question the thing that we keep telling ourselves is we need to figure out a way to build our capacity to take advantage of a lot of those government contracts that are out there, and they're there, and they're a lot of. I mean, I'll for example in New York right now. New York just put out two sites for MWB only for minority women-owned businesses, right? The mayor of DC put out 5 sites last year where she said explicitly that she wants minority developers to be in the driver's seat, right? So you're seeing a lot of municipalities right now who are understanding that there is this sort of wealth gap or wealth disparity that has occurred for years and years, and they're helping to, doing their part to help bridge that gap. However, you know, is the capacity there to take advantage of these opportunities? And that's where, in my mind, the opportunity really, really lies for us to really prosper. Is, if you're living in the city and you're doing work in the city, you might as well be like, think about it, right? Just, think about, I think the DC spends about $500 million a year maintaining its facilities, right? So who are the firms that are actually maintaining those facilities?
Right.
Right. That's, think about the airport, right? And the airports in whatever city you're in, think about the parking associated with the airport, right? So you can manage, not only can you manage the facility as the airport, but you can also manage the parking. You can manage the concessions that at each and every single one of these airports. So the business opportunities are endless when it comes to government contracting. And I just employ a lot of us to sort of look at that and go, like, how can we take advantage of that?
Yeah.
Right? Like I mean, one last example, I know someone who does printing for the government. That's his contract. Printing.
Printing what exactly?
Like all the budget books, like any and everything that municipalities need to have printed.
Yeah.
Right? He's got the contract.
Wow.
For printing. Right?
One person.
Okay. Right? It's what I'm trying to say, like the opportunities, and again, it's not just even in the local government. The federal government also has, I mean, I'm not even involved in the federal government space, right? But that's a space that we haven't even touched, but the opportunities there are endless. So we need to figure out a way to take advantage of that, especially if they are encouraging minority Black-owned businesses to be part of that ecosystem.
Okay. And you also mentioned building a sustainable business, which is what you have done, and you've done that with a majority Black team. So
yes.
You speak on the statements that are often made by corporations about, we haven't been able to find enough Black talent, or they're just we need help filling our pipeline of Black talent. They're just not out there. Like how did you find all these magical Black people live there?
You know what? I'll tell you this, right? The Black people that I've found to be part of the team are all unicorns. They actually do not exist. I'll be the first one to tell you that. No, look, I think the real estate business as a whole is a very unforgiving business, right? So that's number one. And if you ask any Black person, or most Black people that you come in contact with, and it happens to me today, when I tell people that I'm involved in real estate, the first thing that comes to their mind is, "Oh, you're a realtor," and I'm like, "No, I'm not a realtor," because that's the extent of most of our exposure. So if we are not exposed in this field, how are we going to be able to have or gain the necessary tools to be able to succeed in real estate development, right? So So there is that perception that, oh, because we are not familiar with the real estate development game, which is true, because we're not that familiar with the real estate development game, there aren't that many of us who partake in or even understand or even know that there is this whole industry out there called real estate development. So what I have done is basically taking the risk that the industry would not take when it comes to Black and brown people, right? If you have a college degree, you've clearly demonstrated that you've got some level of discipline in you to be able to, write your papers, get good grades, and eventually graduate. So, and if you're an engineer, not necessarily passionate about engineer, but you see people putting up buildings and you see, but you don't want to be a contractor, but you can't really connect the dots between the contractor and the developer. You end up just, never sort of get into or achieving your goals. So my job is to, one, educate people that look like me about the industry and getting them interested in the industry. And to the extent that any one of them demonstrate any level of interest, given their prior experience, so long as they're willing to learn and they work hard, I will take that risk. And I have taken that risk multiple times, to the point where, yes, we've built an organization that is 98% Black and brown individuals who are working tirelessly to, create housing for people of modest income.
Oh, that's great. Now it's kind of switching gears a little bit to the industry itself. Like, due to the pandemic and COVID, there's a lot of talk, or I guess reality, of commercial properties being I guess vacant or having less vacancy because people are working from home. Where do you see, are you seeing that kind of turn around a little bit? How did that affect your business, and where do you see things going, I guess now?
So, Tony, I'll tell you, this is the reason why I'm in residential, right? As far as I'm concerned, like this is why I'm not in the commercial space, and I'm 100% devoted to residential, because guess what? Where are you working from now? You're working from home, right? Okay. so I find a lot of comfort in knowing that residential is here to stay, even in the event of a pandemic. Clearly, nobody wants that again.
Right.
Look, the thing that I would say is this: I would say that earlier on in the pandemic, that was probably the narrative. I think now that people have been at home for a while, there are some people who are like, oh, I like the idea of working from home. And there's some people who are like, I can't wait to get the hell out of my house. Right? And obviously with parents with kids are also of the mindset that I can't wait for this kid to go back to school. Right? It's like, so I think everyone right now has gotten a really good dose of what it is to work from home. And not to say that working from home is overrated, but like with everything else, too much of a good thing is, it eventually becomes like, okay, I'm over it. So I think what's going to eventually end up happening is the idea of working from home is a really good idea, right? The idea of not having to sit in traffic, the idea of not having to, sit on a metro station during rush hour. I think it's a great idea. I think what most companies are going to end up doing, especially now that we've demonstrated that, for the most part, as a society, we can still function, even though we're not in the confines of our cubicles or our office desks, is that we're still a very productive society. So I think a lot of companies are going to end up adopting teleworking policies, whereby folks can work from home for a couple of days out of the week, but are still required to show up at the office. And whether or not that impacts the square footages of how companies look at space in the future, possibly. I would say that there's going to be some shrinkage. I don't know if it's going to be 50% or I don't know if it's going to be to the extent of 50%, because people are still going to show up. But I think that companies are going to definitely revisit how they look at their office spaces in the future. But more importantly, I think people are going to have now a premium on how big they want their residential spaces to be,
Yeah.
because right? Like, can you imagine? Like, I've got 2 kids, man, and a wife,
Mm.
all people working from home. No. Everybody, I need I need everybody far apart. So yeah, I think that's it's like, on one hand you're going to see shrinkage in the commercial, but on the other hand you're going to see demand for bigger spaces in residential building, which is part of the reason why, as you can tell, the home prices of homes have surged,
Yeah.
because now people are doing away with apartments
Yeah.
and wanting to be in their homes because because of space requirements.
Yeah, and even the increase in the purchase of like home repair and home decor, beautifying your home, setting up some type of
Yep.
gym situation, and there's a lot of purchases or
Yep.
consumer activity in those areas too.
Yep, yeah, even down to furniture, right? Like, even
Mm-hmm.
especially like outdoor furniture. Like, who would
Mm-hmm.
have thought that we would be experiencing a shortage in outdoor furniture, but all of that is happening now because everybody's demand is high.
Yeah,
So
times are changing. Look,
yeah,
well, I appreciate your time. Thank you, so much for sharing, the gems that you have. One last question I have for you is definitely
sure.
related to when it comes to like government contracts. Again, I know a lot of people are going to have this question. Okay, I'm a real estate professional. How do I plug in? Like, what are maybe like some resources that anyone, no matter what city or state you're into, or even if it's like a general site, they can go to plug in, get some information about how to start doing some business with the
Sure.
local or federal government?
Sure. So the thing that I would say to that is, regardless of what industry you're in, right? Regardless of what industry you're in, um, that let's just use a landscaper. I think that's forget what I do as a real estate, but let's just use a landscaper, right? Think about the vast amount of property that federal or local government have, right? Especially now in the summertime, all those parks have to be manicured and cut and well maintained, right? So there is a government agency that is responsible for ensuring that their properties are well kept and well maintained.
Mm.
So whether it's landscaping, whether it's mechanical systems, right? There's a government agency in your municipality that is responsible for ensuring that all of their properties are well maintained. The same thing goes for a government agency that is responsible for, disposing of an unused parcel, or disposing of of a house that has been decrepit and has been vacant for a very long time. So those agencies exist. So what you want to do is, number one, is make sure you get on those mailing lists, right? Because they have mailing lists of announcements that they make regularly, where they're always requesting for service. I would tell you that request is unending. I get emails almost daily of a government agency wanting something from some company, wanting a service from some company.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. Number two is make sure you're networking with those agency heads, because it's one thing to be able to look at you on a piece of paper. It's another thing to be able to look at you face to face. And if you're that convincing, get them to come and see your site, right? So one of the things that we've done in the past is we always do site tours with government officials. It's like, hey, you don't believe that I can build a 100-unit tower? Why don't you get in your car, 5 minutes, come, please do not buy them, Lord Joe. Don't do that.
That's a mistake.
Do not spend any money on any government official, even if you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. Like, you need to understand the rules associated with gifting. So please don't do that. But again, at the end of the day, it's that government official's job to make sure that their job is done at the very high level. So if you can demonstrate to them that you're capable, by all means, try and convince them to come to your site. And the last thing I would say is, make sure your pitch or your proposal is just top notch. Make sure it's top notch. Make sure it knocks the ball out the park. Make sure you have a really good understanding of the pricing, because it's one thing to present well, it's also another thing to put good good bids on the table. I mean, if your bids are just outrageous, that may be the end of you. You've basically shot yourself in the foot, and that opportunity or future opportunities will never come your way. But those are the four key things that I would strongly encourage individuals to look into when bidding on government contracts.
Great, great, great. Hey, again, Buwa, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for all the info. You know, best of luck and congratulations on all the amazing work you and your team are doing.
Thank you. Appreciate the plug. Appreciate the audience, and happy to, be a resource to you and anyone within your network.
Great, great. Thanks so much again, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers.
All right, take care.
Bye.